Welcome in, guys. We got Cole Wright here on the setup, man. Sean Hendrickson here with me moderating. What's up, guys? Excited to talk Cubs and bash on the Dodgers at the same time. How does that sound?
Hey, anytime the kid that lives down the street that has 17 bicycles, what do you need 17 bicycles for, man? I mean, you can only ride one at a time. It's outrageous.
We have a friend of ours, Sean and I have a friend. His name's Justin. He saw a tweet from a Dodgers friend that said, anyone who's mad at the Dodgers doesn't realize, like, you know, the Dodgers are just spending money to make their team better. Every owner should want to do that. And our friend said, well, that's kind of like the rich kids trying to justify like that they have poor problems too. Like go get you got a used whatever Xbox, and I went and got a used Mercedes. Poor you, poor me. It's crazy, man. And you used to work for the Dodgers, so I mean, we'll kind of get into this in a second. But
they didn't spend money like that when I worked there, because I remember seeing guys on the field that looked a whole lot different than their 1 through 9 and their rotation and their bullpen right about now.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like it's been a completely, and you know, a lot of people are like, well, the Dodgers haven't won, you know, enough championships to justify all this spending. And I'm like, well, the Dodgers really haven't spent like this until the last few years. It's just because of this TV deal.
Yeah. And the one thing you think of, it's like people are like, oh, the Dodgers are the new Yankees. But when you look at the Yankees from back in the day, did they spend towards the tail end of that dynasty with Jeter winning all those championships? Yes. But where were they the strongest at? Right up the middle. Jorge Posada, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, Andy Pettitte, all those guys. Even when you go back earlier, they had Chuck Knobloch, not necessarily a homegrown talent, but a guy who fit in before he got the yips. I mean, if you're strong up the middle, that's how you know that a team has a solid bedrock and foundation, and that's what they were. And then they added fringe pieces. Did those guys that were really good on that team, since they were with that squad, did they have to get paid eventually down the road? Yes, but it wasn't to the tune of, I mean, $1.35 billion in deferred money.
It's crazy.
It's like the wimpy from Popeye philosophy. Like, I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a Shohei Ohtani today. Like,
yes,
unbelievable, man.
I don't know how much we want to get into, you know, the CBA and all that stuff, but you got to think that's going to be the top priority for that in 26 is deferral money, right?
You would think, and it makes it a whole lot easier when guys are like, okay, I can still make some pretty solid bread, and then I can move, and then the money that I get in 6, 7, 8 years or whatever, it'll be taxed because I live in Texas now, or not taxed at all. It's like that. It's a sticky situation. And I feel like those guys don't have to see all that money go elsewhere, you know, with California taxes when they live in California and play for a team like the Dodgers. So I feel like the accounting department has worked wonders, not just for these players, but, you know, for that organization as well. It's nuts.
So, I mean, just because you used to work with them, and I know you know a lot of people over there, where do you stand on this being good, bad, or indifferent for baseball?
I mean, I don't love it. I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, when you see, you know, Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott both gone. I mean, both of those guys would have looked fantastic in a Cubs uniform. Yep. So, and it just doesn't make sense, the stockpiling. And, you know, last year I said, well, they better win the World Series, or they're going to be pretty embarrassed if they don't. And they did. And they did it in convincing fashion. So it just feels like there's just too many pieces of that puzzle to fail, but that's what they've done. They've set themselves up for success. And I mean, it's tough when you see all the money they do have to spend, and nobody else really has that amount of money. And I just feel like the deferral system makes it a little bit easier when it's Los Angeles. And, you know, it's very unfortunate what's going on with the fires and everything, but I still feel like that's a very enticing spot. Like, players want to go there, especially when you get players from Japan, because it's the closest flight for them to get home. And it makes it that much easier. And the destination, there's no layover flights. It seems like a small thing, but that's kind of not a small thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest disappointment in all of this, brother, is you have, Sasaki. Like, I don't think he was ever going to come to the Cubs. I mean, I know the pitch was good. I know it was one of those that we were holding out hope, but it felt to me like the Cubs were probably third at best and all that. And as we saw, they were fourth.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go and you put in an offer for Tanner Scott that is basically the same as the Dodgers, and you end up having the guy who has been working with him for the last 2 years and Tyler Zombro on the Cubs, it's just, I don't know, like, as a player, I get it. You want to go win a ring. Kirby Yates, I get it. Like, okay, you got 1, maybe 2 years left in your career, go win a ring. But it's like, dude, why you want to just like go be a juggernaut amongst juggernauts? Let's get out there and like help a team take over Goliath. That's where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Michael Jordan versus LeBron, the super team thing. I mean, think about how many guys, or Charles Barkley. I mean, Charles Barkley never won a championship. Did he ever join a quote unquote super team? Maybe, but not how guys coordinate in the offseason and go on vacation and ride banana boats and do all that. It's not the same thing. So, you know, I think it's just the ability to be able to build these teams. And I feel like it's a trend in the right direction, because it doesn't seem as if the Cubs are quite done yet, just building what they need to build. And I think that the Kyle Tucker bridge could be something that could lead to Alex Bregman. I could be out in left field, but right now reports are still saying that it's a high likelihood, the possibilities of Alex Bregman becoming a Cub, they're still one of the front runners for him right now. So if that could be a piece of the puzzle, I mean, who wouldn't love to see Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman inserted into this lineup right now with all the pop that they do have and all the potential that they have. And it's all about protecting guys in that lineup. And I feel as if a Bregman, in addition to Kyle Tucker, who's already here, could provide tons of protection and tons of pop.
You'd be surprised. A lot of Cubs Twitter does not want Alex Bregman. A lot of them are convinced, a lot like Isaac Paredes, that field would not play well to his swing. Personally, though,
no disrespect to Isaac Paredes, but I feel like Alex Bregman is a more well-rounded bat. Every single one of his home runs, every single one is not to the pull side. You know, if I had to go back and look at some of the metrics, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm 99.9% sure that he's hit at least one opposite field home run in his career. And for a player to have never hit one to non-pull side, that just shows you how one-dimensional that swing is. And I saw the shredder on MLB Network the other day. They had Isaac Paredes inside the top 10 third baseman in the league. And no disrespect, I didn't necessarily see that a season ago. And whether it was defensively or offensively, you know, his ability to hit at Wrigley, you know, wasn't there. And his ability to go out there and pick it like a top 10 third baseman in the league, I don't know if he was necessarily there. I feel like the biggest loss in that Kyle Tucker trade would have been Cam Smith, you know, a guy who potentially could be that cat who picks it at third, hits tanks, and has so much upside. But Isaac Paredes, I feel like, was a great piece of the puzzle and what he brought for the team last year. And to be able to get a guy like Kyle Tucker, hopefully you'll be able to, you know, ride that storm out and re-sign him to an extension.
Guys, we got Cole Wright here from Marquee Sports Network, and we want to get to your questions. We want you to ask a lot of questions because this guy right here has a 101 degree fever right now.
I told you, man, Michael Jordan was dropping cats on the side of the street with the flu, but it's all right.
I never have claimed to be a Michael Jordan, and nor will I be. So I want to talk less, and I want you guys to ask your questions. So start dropping them in the comments. Sean is going to start popping them up there. And I do want to ask one because I think, yes, thank you. Wow, Sean and I are literally on the same page here. Jack says, how was CubsCon? I think that would be a great thing for you and I to talk about.
It was fantastic. I mean, just another year. I mean, this year was more explosive than the past 2 years. I mean, obviously, after everything going away in 2021, after 2020 and the launch of Marquee, but for Sammy Sosa to be back, I mean, that place was electric. I mean, and then Ryan Sandberg to get the ovation that he got, and just to see the fans out there just showing love from each and every single direction. What more can you ask for? I mean, Kyle, you were there. You saw, I mean, families, you know, friends, everybody just getting together. And you just see the generations of Cubs fans and all the people I got to meet, like, people from Maine, Texas, from all over the place, from California. It just seems that Cubs convention knows no bounds. Like Cubs fans, they'll do whatever it takes to be able to see their team and to see a successful season get off the ground. And it was glad. I mean, I was glad to be a part of it. And it was just a great thing to see each and every single year. I feel like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger once again.
Did you get to talk to Sammy?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. We got to interview him afterwards, and there was a little thing after, like next to the biggest assembly hall, the main ballroom afterwards, and I got to take a picture with he and my daughter and my wife, and I feel like she plays ball, so she's finally starting to realize. I show her videos and of Sammy Sosa, and the one thing that jumps out that she said is, man, he's got a lot of opposite field power, and the opposite of Isaac Paredes, but I don't think anyone putting Isaac and Sammy in the same category. But I mean, just the way he could go with that outer pitch and and drive that into the right center field bleachers. I feel like it's just a testament to the kind of bat that dude was, and just to see him back in the mix, man. He was part of the soundtrack to my summer as a 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old. We were getting older, and we were trying to do damage, and we wanted to play like a dude like him. I mean, just to go back and look at some of those numbers. I mean, over a 4-year span, 60 plus, 50, 60 plus home runs. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, how many dudes are able to do stuff like that?
It was, and for my generation, about 10 years after yours, it was the reason that a lot of us Cubs fans across the world became Cubs fans. And I got to tell you, like, I didn't know how showmany Sammy was going to be, but man, I mean, he was Sammy Sosa in full-fledged. Everything coming out of his mouth was just like cracking jokes and being that showman, Sammy, coming out with the American flag. I mean, he was in his element, man. It was really fun to see.
Yeah, and to see that he hasn't lost a step, and to see that if you put him in a game and needed one hit, I think he would go out there and get it. Between the two new inductees, he and D. Lee, into the Cubs Hall of Fame, you couldn't go wrong with either one of those guys in an old timers game, because I don't think either one of them is old by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I took a picture with Sammy, put my arm around his shoulder, and I was like, well, man, still feels like concrete. Yeah. So I'm guessing that he still stays after it, and I'm guessing the swing's still pretty loose. And I mean, when you hit the amount of home runs that he's hit, 9th all time on the Major League Baseball list, I mean, it's crazy to think. All the people that have been able to play Major League Baseball, just the best 1% of all people that play baseball, Sammy Sosa is inside the top 10 of home runs. I mean, it's unbelievable, man. It's just history walking around right in front of our face. And, with Fergie there and Billy there and Rhino there and everybody, it's always great to see those guys. Now, Lee Smith as well. I mean, Lee Smith back healthy. Always good to see Lee Arthur Smith. So to have Hall of Famers that are still around and able to interact with the fans, I feel like it's crazy.
We're going to get to a few questions here in a second, guys. But Cole, you did something that I think it just solidified Kyle Tucker signing an extension. You sing happy birthday to Kyle, or you got the entire room to sing happy birthday to Kyle. That was cool.
Yeah, it wasn't the best rendition, because at that point my voice was kind of blown out. So I feel like I didn't really give the people what they would normally get from my singing voice, the fine voice that it is. No, not really. But it was just to think about him coming out. I'm like, oh, it's his birthday. I'm like, let's just shut it down, stop it, and sing happy birthday to him. Just let him know what Chicagoans are like, what it's like to be in Chicago. Like we recognize the little things, like those little things resonate with Cubs fans and the Cubs fan audience. So I feel like Kyle, if that was his first taste of Chicago, maybe was it a little corny? Maybe it was, but I thought it would be fun, and I thought that he would get a kick out of it, and he did. You could see all his buddies like kind of nudging him and whatnot. So welcome to the Cubs, Kyle Tucker. Glad to have you.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your likelihood that he's actually gonna be a Cub long term?
I mean, I really couldn't tell you. I mean, hopefully it would be dependent on how he goes out there and performs this season. And I hope that he would want to go out there and have the best season of his career, because not to take anything away from Houston and their ballpark, but I think fine performances are more well received at Wrigley Field than they are down there in Houston. And I could be completely off on the wrong page, but Cubs fans are probably the smartest baseball fans in all of baseball. I mean, that's debatable. Maybe 2 or 3 other teams where their fan base is as knowledgeable. And I think if Kyle comes and he's able, say for whatever reason, Kyle Tucker hits 41 home runs, do you think that he's ever going to want for anything in the city of Chicago? And if the Cubs make it to the playoffs and have a serious run this season, I think that he could become a staple. And being able to have longevity and familiarity with a specific team, that's a big thing. And for him to have roots in Houston and now be a part of this Cubs franchise, I feel like it wouldn't be too shabby for him to sign that extension and be here for as long as possible and put up numbers. If you put up numbers, as you see, I mean, he saw what it was like for Derek Lee to be back. Clearly not a grassroots Cub, but a guy who was able to come to the Cubs and put up some serious numbers. I think that could also be an enticing point for him.
Sean, once again, is just in line with me right now. Javon Burrell says, how is the Cubs organization, quote unquote, just breaking even with the most loyal fans in baseball? I don't get it. Fans show up even in the many, many years of the losing season. So obviously he's referring to Tom Ricketts' comments on ESPN 1000. He essentially said something very similar in his interview with David Kaplan. Did you get a chance to listen to either one of those?
Yeah, I saw a paraphrasing of those. Yeah, I mean, I don't wander around the 4th floor over at Wrigley. I don't know what the accounting looks like. I mean, that's not for me to dive into. You know, a lot of people are always like, well, you know, they take it too easy. I'm like, okay, well, essentially, Tom is my boss. You know, he owns the team. Yeah. The team owns our network, and I would love to see someone go in there and say and go into their boss's office and start pulling drawers out. Well, hey, hold on a second. So I just go. I try to get every single show off the runway. Try to land the plane. Hopefully, the Cubs can win ball games, and I try to leave all that to the guys who wear suits every day to work, and that's not me because I normally wear shorts and a hoodie once I get in there to stay warm inside of the air-conditioned studios. But you know, it has nothing to do with me. I mean, I wish if it were up to me, I'd put out the biggest, billfold ever and say, let's outspend the Dodgers, let's outspend the Yankees, let's outspend the Mets. But it's not up to me. So, I mean, if I had like that endless supply of cash flow, that'd be fantastic. But I don't know exactly what goes into the day-to-day operations of running a baseball team fiscally and financially.
Well, I'll make this one comment. You don't have to reply because I know Tom is your boss and there's only so much that you can have an opinion about. But in that interview with David Kaplan, he did say that, you know, it doesn't make sense for these 10-year deals because at the end of these deals, these guys are 38, 39, 40 years old and you can't expect them to still be producing. So we really like these 2, 3, 4-year deals. And I just don't think Kyle Tucker is going to be open to that, especially if he has a phenomenal 41 home run season, like you said. I think he's going to try to take the biggest deal. He's going to try to use Juan Soto as a comp. And I don't think that the Cubs are going to be in that position. Now, if he has a subpar, which would kind of be boring, but a subpar 2025, and now you can say, hey, you have 2 or 3 years again with the Cubs to try to get yourself back up to stardom. I could see that happening. So that's where I'm at. But I would love to get to some questions now. So Sean, brother.
I've always said, though, I don't think that those long extended deals are smart either. Like, and it started with the Tatis deal. I'm like, this Tatis just signed this deal. I believe his deal when he first signed it was 14 years. And at that point, I'm like, my daughter's going to be like 27, 28 years old when this is done.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. And it really doesn't. So when you think about it and look at, you put some of these deals under a microscope, it would make more sense. And I'm more if a guy is that guy you want, I like a 5-year deal. 5-year deals are fantastic. But 5 years is a pretty significant chunk of time when you look at it. Like, a lot of things change. You know, kids go from junior high to high school or from elementary school to middle school. I mean, there's a lot that changes in 5 years. I mean, think about what you guys were doing 5 years ago and how much different everything was. Now think about 14 years ago. Like, what? A 14-year deal? Like, that's nuts. Like, for anybody, and not for nothing. I'm not going to take anything away from Juan Soto and his ability to get the most money, but the fact that people think that Juan Soto is the greatest player in Major League Baseball right now is absolutely crazy. Like, well, look at how much he walks. I'm like, all right, stop. because I'm going to go back and say, if you go back 20 years ago, dudes were they worried about walks. But I feel like walks have taken such a precedent right now, and they are important. You need to get on base, but walks don't move runners unless there's a guy on first, and still that only moves them up one base. Give me a guy who gets hits. Like I feel like the team walk is so against team hits. Like the people who love walks don't love Luis Arraez, which is crazy to me. Like you don't like a guy that hits. Like, well, it's hard hit contact and this. I'm like, stop. Give me a dude who hits and we can win. Like that's for any team, all 30 of them. Like that's for any minor league team. That's for a high school team. That's for a junior college team. If you have guys that can hit, if you have cats that are singularly focused on walks, like I just don't, that's a crazy mindset to me. These seem like the same kind of cats who are out there throwing bullpens with no hat on, these youngsters. Like I see y'all, and maybe I'm the old dude, like, like waving at the clouds, but it's like, how do you throw bullpens with no hat on? What are we doing here? Unbelievable.
I think there's an argument for both sides on that, right? It's the OPS has become such a big number, OPS plus. Also, on the other side, it's a joke that he was a Gold Glove finalist. Like if you watch his highlights, so many highlights came out right after that. Here's your Gold Glove finalist Juan Soto, and it's just him looking like a fool in right field. He's going to be a full-time DH in a couple of years. And he can't pitch. So you literally just spent more money on a guy than Shohei Ohtani, who at least is going to be back on the mound pumping 98 to 100 in less than half a year here.
Yeah. And if Shohei Ohtani wanted to, everyone's always said that he's the best outfielder on any team he's ever on. They said he was the best outfielder on the Angels. And oh, by the way, Mike Trout is on the Angels. I mean,
and oh, by the way, because he knew he wasn't pitching this year, he went ahead and showed that he could steal 59 bases.
I mean, come on. That wasn't even necessary.
Well, it was
to do that.
He just literally has all of these skills that I just think people don't even know about because he's just trying to make it through an entire season. It's wild to me. It's wild to me, but you can't ignore the walks. You can't ignore the contact. You can't ignore the clutch hitting from Soto. But at the same time, like I just can't justify that kind of money.
It's way too much. It's way too much. And I just feel like if someone told me you have to win, and I know that Bobby Witt Jr. already signed his deal with Kansas City, but if I had to pick one of the two to sign to a long-term deal, I might pick Bobby Witt Jr. And if I had to pick one of the two to sign to a 3-year deal, and I know this is a complete ultimate hypothetical, but I would sign Aaron Judge over Juan Soto. Just because I feel like and everything right now is so magnified because he dropped that ball in the World Series. However, he had made an error in like 1,000 games. That was just the inopportune time for him. Yeah. And if I'm on the mound and if I'm saying I need to get one of these two dudes out, I'm not getting either one of them out because I'm a 46-year-old rag arm nowadays. But I'm going to go, okay, give me Juan Soto. I want no part of Aaron Judge, man. Aaron Judge will rip your ears off your head. That dude is bad. And the slump that he had in the postseason, I feel like that was extra magnified as well. But people forget that Barry Bonds was not a great postseason player either. I mean, does that take anything away from him? And I know that you're going to have people, detractors that'll say, well, Barry Bonds was, he's the poster child for juicers. But we can also stop that because he was also the founding father of the 500 club before there was any steroid speculation. So we can talk about that all day. I mean, I feel like we have 45 minutes, but we could go for 3:45 right now.
We could. But now we're going to get in.
I'm watching all the Hall of Fame guys get in. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, no disrespect to Billy Wagner, but when has anyone ever said that Billy Wagner was a better closer than Andrew Jones was a center fielder? Not once, not never. No one's ever said that. I don't have to vote though. So
there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that you kind of raise your eyebrow, and there's a lot of people not in the Hall of Fame that you also raise your eyebrow. Like you said, we can talk about that for a while.
It's crazy.
Sean, let's get to some Q&A, brother. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so first one here comes from Jack. He says, Cole, what's your favorite part of your job at Marquee?
I mean, the fact that I feel like I'm the conductor for Cubs baseball to get, the train on the tracks and, I get to hand it off to Boog and JD and then they hand it right back to me. I feel like it's a fantastic responsibility. And, the 13-year-old in me never takes it lightly. I never, don't put that responsibility on a pedestal, and being able to host Cubs convention and go to spring training and talk with the guys. And I feel like what isn't my favorite part of working at Marquee? I get to walk into Wrigley Field. I get to go essentially wherever I can. I mean, I never do, but I could go sit in the dugout during games. You know, that would be, I mean, just walking in the street clothes. Hey, Counts, what's up, man? How's it going? Hey, Dansby, nice player a few plays ago. But I mean, that to me, like I said, the 13-year-old in me is always thrilled by that. Like on my days off, like my wife and daughter are out of town. They'll be at one of my daughter's softball tournaments. Like I'll go down on my day off and go to a game. And first I'll go into work, I'll drop off whatever. And they'll be like, why are you here? You're off today. And I'll be like, because I live like 20 minutes from Wrigley Field and I could go in and watch the game and enjoy the baseball game instead of watching it on TV and sitting on the couch. It just, to me, it makes 100% sense. So just everything that is involved, you know, the interaction with the people that work at Wrigley, the people that work at the network, you know, just Cubs fans. I feel very lucky and blessed, man. It's pretty cool.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. So I want to throw this one out here. It's a question, but also an exclamation. What are your thoughts on the idea of bringing on someone like a Trevor Bauer if they're looking for depth and they're looking for help in the rotation or even the bullpen? What are your thoughts on a guy like Trevor Bauer?
I think he's got stuff, or at least he had stuff. I just don't think he's a very likable dude. And that just doesn't go back to anything. I don't think he was a very likable dude before there was any speculation or you know any of the legalities or any suspensions were doled out. I mean, he and Garrett Cole aren't good friends from their college days, but they seem like this exact same dude. They just seem like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to hang out with Trevor Bauer or Garrett Cole for that matter. Garrett Cole doesn't even know how to cover bases in the biggest game of his life, and then he's throwing responsibility on other cats. But I don't know. He has stuff, but then again, you've seen him on YouTube now getting rocked by like an 18-year-old. So I mean, is the 18-year-old is he a phenom? I don't know. I mean, if you're a Cy Young Award winner and you talk about how good your stuff is, you would think that would never happen. But I mean, he had good stuff this year down in the Mexican League, but then again, that league is not the same as what he'd be trying to pitch in here. And I feel like he's just burned so many bridges. He's just the way he talks to cats. And I just feel like you see it on social media. He's almost like the professional version of Teacherman, you know, the hitting coach, the guy with the HLP. Like the way he talks to people is so outrageous. I'm like, would you talk to somebody like that in a dark alley at 3:00 in the morning? Probably not. So I just feel like that he won't. I feel like he would enter a situation where he might not have a bunch of friends and a bunch of people to turn to. I just think that's not the ideal situation that most teams want. I think they want to just stay away from that dude. You know, I feel like there's other pitchers that they say, well, he might not be a clubhouse guy, and they'll still bring him in. Like he's really not a clubhouse guy. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of teams that are, you know, looking to acquire his services anytime soon.
That's fair. I mean, I figured it'd be more clubhouse than it would be anything else. I mean, he could be a decent bullpen guy or even a fifth, sixth day kind of guy, but the idea of just, you don't want to break the continuity that you have with those guys that you already built.
Get this stuff back to where it once was, because I mean that was 5 years ago. Though, like we said, how much changes in 5 years? Like if someone would have gave Trevor Bauer an 11-year deal, you might be like, oh, there could be some buyer's remorse, because 5 years ago, I mean, we know how good he was. He was obviously Cy Young Award winner, and we also know how good Yu Darvish was. I thought Yu Darvish should have won that, and I mean things have changed. So I feel like if he's still throwing 97, 98, teams will give him a serious look. And I've even talked about that before. I'm like, why aren't more teams? But it's you think about it, it's because he's that guy that nobody wants in the clubhouse. I mean, he's the guy that nobody wants to hang out with. He drives off by himself, and everyone's like, okay, all right, guys, we'll all meet at, you know, Buffalo Wild Wings. Like Trevor's gone, cool. So
it is kind of surprising that like a team like the A's or the Pirates or someone like that's kind of like, hey, we're not going to be very good this year anyway, doesn't just take a chance on him because of just the, you know, no press is bad press, right? Like it would probably get more people in the stands, but I think there is a lot of question marks from a Cubs perspective of, do you want to rock the boat for sure?
No, especially there's so many good dudes in the Cubs clubhouse. Like you don't want to bring a cat like that in. Like if you're going to bring a dude in, maybe you want to bring in a guy with a bad temper, or, something to that effect, or just a guy who's maybe overly aggressive. But I don't think you want to bring in a dude that has that kind of baggage hitched to his trailer, man. It's just not a good look. And I think that's why 30 teams have balked on him.
Appreciate that. Let me throw another one. Jack threw at us here. He says he would rather have Alex Bregman, but would also be perfectly fine with Matt Shaw if they want to stick with Shaw. So, in your opinion, what would you rather have going into this season? Would you like to have Bregman on here, and like in those scenarios, would you rather have Bregman going on a let's say it's a team friendly type of deal, or would you like to just let Matt Shaw have the runway and go with it? Your thoughts?
I mean, who wouldn't want to have a season and proven World Series champion to get your season going? And when there's question marks about your second baseman, your Gold Glove second baseman, after he's coming off an injury, and you have a guy who's penciled in to play third base in the future, but could also play second base, wouldn't it make sense to have things short up in each direction? It's like, say everything doesn't go swimmingly for Nico. Then you have Shaw play second base, and then you can have Alex Bregman play third. Dansby fits right in. You don't have to worry about Bushy moving from anywhere but first, because that's where he's at right there. Because, I mean, you've heard people say, well, if things don't go right, maybe Michael Busch can play first. I know you don't want that, because Michael Busch, the transformation he made from a third baseman to a first baseman, next level. I mean, How many times did we see him make plays late in the game that saved the game defensively? And I feel like all the little things that he's still looking to fine tune, like his ability to receive at first base, put down tags, all those little things that make him a potential Gold Glove finalist. Because I feel like it sounds crazy, but from what we saw in the second half of him defensively, I feel like he really could be a Gold Glove finalist. And if you have everybody there that needs to do what they do, and say you have Bregman and he puts it together, I mean, think how good that infield could be in addition to that outfield. Because if people don't think that Pete's going to win a Gold Glove, whether it's this year, next year, or the year after, then shame on them, because, I mean, he's special to watch too.
He's a lot of fun to watch.
Come on. I mean, all day. I mean, the way he floats and the way I just feel like, as good as Happer is, with his 3 Gold Gloves, and Kyle Tucker, he has a Gold Glove. I feel like both of those guys know it's like, man, our job's just that much easier. We don't have to cover nearly as much ground with this dude in center.
You know what's sad, though? I don't think the PCA is going to show off that range and just how special he is at Wrigley Field anytime soon. You can't rob a home run at Wrigley. And the outfield, by all means, is not a huge outfield. So he's going to keep on making those running plays that most guys would have to dive for. But, man, I mean, I was there for the robbed home run in LA, and I'm just like, Wrigley will never be able to see that, which is kind of sad.
That's all right, because guess what? As long as he keeps it off the ground and in his glove, and if he sprints straight to the wall and then like runs right around the wall like we've seen him do before and makes plays, it's like, I mean, some of the plays that he's able to pull in are bananas. And to see, and I like watching him cover a small space too, because I know there's balls that some guys wouldn't get to, or they'd make it difficult. And and we'll just sit and watch game. Like, look how easy he made that look. Look how easy he got to that ball. So I think that's going to be a lot in store this season for Pete.
I think it's very under talked about too. The idea, there's potential for PCA and Bush to win a Gold Glove. Then you have corner outfitters with a Gold Glove. The middle infield has a Gold Glove. Mm-hmm. If you did bring on Bregman, you have another Gold Glove. I think it's very, it's maybe like something you're not talking about at all from the pitching side. Yeah, Wrigley might have played to their advantage, but if you had a literal whole diamond full of Gold Glovers, you may not need that extra huge arm, although it would be nice.
The metrics cats would love that.
Just throwing it out there.
But guess what? The traditionalists would love that too, because if you give me a whole diamond full of Gold Glove cats, guess what? Let's play. Roll the bats out there, roll the balls out there. Let's get after it.
Let me throw one at you from Randy. Randy says, with the Cubs not having that first base bench bat to help out Bush, are there any chances that you think they could try Suzuki at first this spring to occasionally spell Bush and give Suzuki that happy feeling of playing in the field?
I don't know how I feel about that one. I mean, first base is not like just some place where you can put dudes. I feel like there's this myth that's been perpetuated over the years, like in Little League, throw the big clumsy kid at first base. That's not it. That's not it. You want a guy, you want a first baseman that plays with the heart of a shortstop, with the mind of a third baseman. So that's why I feel like we've had a lot of conversations about it, whether it's Joe, whether it's Cliff, Carlos Pena, how it feels like washed up third basemen make fantastic first basemen. And that's slight or slouch, because third base is probably the hardest position on a baseball diamond. If you asked just a regular cat with maybe a little bit of baseball background, hey, you get to play in a big league game tomorrow, but you can only play one of two positions. You have to either catch or play third. I feel like people be like, oh, God, that made it a whole lot harder. You know what I'm saying? I thought you were going to let me play, this, that, or the other position. But those two positions right there, that'll strike a little bit of fear into someone, even with a little bit of baseball seasoning. I mean, so you're not just wanting to say, hey, let's just go play third base. Let's go play catcher in a major league game. So when you see converted third basemen make that move to the other side of the diamond, I feel like the throw is more uphill from first base as opposed to downhill at third base. If you think and pat your glove and take too much time, then that ball sails. And when it's arm side and that's where you're throwing up from first base to third base, it makes the throws easier. And I feel like everything slows down just a little bit. And maybe that's what we're seeing, and what we have seen with Michael Busch. I mean, the conversion from third base to first base, I mean, it was pretty much seamless after the first half of the season. We saw a few miscues here and there, but after that, he put in the work. We saw him there every day. We saw him doing all the Ron Washington drills, the short hops, making sure his hands were as good as they get. And I just like him at first base. Long answer. No, I don't want to see Seiya Suzuki at first base at all. Leave him in the DH spot, or if need be, if Kyle Tucker needs a blow, then he can play right field. But I really don't want to see a whole bunch of that either.
Cole, when I was at spring training last year, I mean, Michael Busch was out there. He was putting in the work, but I got to be honest, it didn't look very good. Like I was worried.
Yikes.
Do you attribute that to Jonathan Moda? Like who do you attribute that kind of improvement to?
And Jonathan Moda is the one who's always out there doing the Ron Washington drills. I mean, I would assume everyone who's watching this right now knows what a Ron Washington drill is, because this is right now is definitely a podcast for baseball insiders and guys who like to know all the nuts and bolts of it. So when you're someone's 5-6 feet away and they're just short hopping it, and they're trying to go glove side and they're keeping their palm up and making sure that they do everything they need to do fundamentally, I feel like Jonathan Moda, he is instrumental in a lot of these guys' development. And I feel like you see him with Dansby, you see him with Nico, we saw him with Christopher Morel. And you can only practice so much. Your natural capabilities are only going to go so far, because then limitations are going to kick in. So if a guy is only so good defensively at a certain spot, you're never going to get the best out of it, no matter how hard they work. Now, maybe Michael Busch, in his heart of hearts, he always thought he was a third baseman, because it seems like a flashier, better position. When you're young coming up, like that, there is always that handle that's placed on a first baseman. He's a slow guy, he can smash, or he's a little clunky position, blah, blah, blah. But third base is different. Oh, it's a hot corner, man. He's got a crazy arm. But I feel like once you make that decision and realize and wrap yourself around that, okay, I am a first baseman, and I'm going to play this to the best of my ability, I'm going to get good at it. He's just better at first base. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Some guys are just better suited for certain positions. I feel like Michael Busch is a better suited first baseman than he was a third baseman. And like I said, that's no disrespect, because what he could be as a first baseman could be pretty special if he puts it all together.
So Cole, we've got a pretty decent amount of questions still left and only a few minutes left to go. You want to treat these as kind of rapid fire?
Come on, let's go.
All right. Go for it, Sean.
Cool deal. So I wanted to give this shout out to Steven here. He made this comment: spring training will be upon us before you know it. Can we please sign a closer, bench first and third baseman, and maybe a pinch hitter? Go Cubs go. The question I want to ask you with that is, what pieces do you think the Cubs need to be ready before spring training / opening night in Tokyo?
Bat and a closer. So Alex Bregman and Kenley Jansen.
Take that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'll take it. We'll go ahead and tweet that out here in a second, or exit out in a second. So let's go with James. He says, Cole, love your announcing style and how you're so quick-witted. Do you just practice ripping references so quick off the dome, or does it just come natural to you? Like, where do you get all these analogies from?
Unfortunately, it comes naturally. And I spent a lot of time in the principal's office for thinking that I was as quick and witty as I now am able to do in a public forum. But yeah, it's I feel like everything's trigger words for me. Like if someone says one thing, it makes me think about that thing, which makes me think about that, which makes me think about that. And like I said, I spent a lot of time in the office, and there were times where my parents were like, I don't know what we're going to do with this kid.
What's your favorite movie to quote?
I mean, Coming to America, Step Brothers, I mean, I feel like there's way too many quotables, and I always ask people, and it's like, what's it from? And they're always looking at me like, the Rolodex is too deep. And I'm like, I know. I spent so much time in front of a TV as a kid, I decided I probably should just be on it.
It's the Catalina wine mixer.
Exactly. Is he saying pow?
Pow!
Windy City Edit says, if the Cubs stayed under the tax this year, could they build up to a $280 million payroll in 2026? Because it only cost them about $11 million in tax to do that next year.
Like I said, the accounting firm of whoever, that's not my expertise. And I mean, ideally, if you could go over that, yes, then why not go over it? But I don't know what the spending parameters always are on a year in, year out basis. So, I mean, that's above my head, above my pay grade. Like I said, if I could, I'd break out the biggest wall. I'd be looking like the Fred Sanford gif, where he's got like the red felt hat on with the feather in it, just sitting there counting money. Like that's what I would do if I could. But unfortunately, that's not my role with the organization.
What is your earliest Cubs memory?
I feel like being in the Sears Tower as a youngster, and I have pictures with my mom and dad, and I'm wearing a Cubs hat. Nice. And I remember being there, and I don't necessarily know if that's a Cubs memory like that, but I feel like it's a memory where I'm attached to wearing Cubs gear. And I mean, that's one of the things I remember. One of my most vivid Cubs memories is sneaking into the All-Star game with my dad, because we gave the girl at the ticket counter through the turnstiles a $100 bill. And then luckily it rained because we were dodging people all week or all day rather. And then when I went and finally found a seat, we sat by the fighter pilots who did the flyover for the stealth bomber. And that's a pretty, I remember before we got there, we were walking around the stadium trying to find a doorway to sneak into. And Renee Latchman opened the side door, like the left field door, which looks a lot different now than it used to. I remember just looking at his ring, and A's World Series ring, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable!" So, I mean, that if there's one memory that's as vivid as any other in my mind, it's that one.
Awesome. Let's see here. Let's go with one from Rich. Rich says, "Cole, will you be doing any coverage from spring training this year?"
Yeah, I'm actually my flights are getting booked like probably right now. I'm going to be down there. I think the 15th through the 20th. Of February. So we're going to be going back and forth. Elise will be there. I'll be there. Taylor will be there. I believe Lance is going to be down there as well. Everyone's going to be, all boots on the ground. So just getting after it. Another season of Cubs baseball, looking to get it off the runway. And hopefully it's warm, because I feel like everyone's always like, oh, it's Arizona, it's going to be great. We wake up every morning, like whether it's Joe or Cliff or I doing shows, it's like 51 degrees with 35-mile-an-hour winds. Our faces, I mean, we're putting chapstick on our cheeks so we don't get all blistered up. But yeah, hopefully it's warm when we go down there, because it hasn't been in years past.
Eric Borch says, question for both you and Kyle. With the Dodgers, Mets, Yankees spending big, and the other 90% of teams not spending at all, do you see the potential of a lockout being very likely now in their next negotiations?
I hope not. I feel like just a level playing field would be something that everyone was in favor of. I mean, teams want to win, but they don't want to do it, at the expense of embarrassing other squads. Maybe they do. I don't know. I mean, I feel like you want the whole product to be solid for everybody. And right now it's trending in that direction where it might not be. So we'll see if the Dodgers go and they win tape to tape again. If they're good like that, the Cubs have a great opportunity to punch them in the mouth in front of, what will be a very Dodger friendly crowd. We saw Mookie Betts on Twitter the other day, going and playing catch with some kids in Japan, and we know that what their rotation looks like. So there's going to be a lot of people cheering for the other blue team. So the Cubs, they have, like I said, a fantastic opportunity to go out there, take two, come back home, still get some spring training games under the belt, and get after it.
Much like you said that finances are not your forte, CBA is not my forte. So I really don't even fully grasp why that dragged out so much. What was it? Was it 2022? I think it was 2022, or was it? Yeah, it was 2022, I think.
Yep.
I still don't fully grasp what all went down there. So I'm not even going to say whether or not I think that another lockout will happen, because I just don't know what all goes into that.
Hope not.
Rich wanted to let you know it was 31 this morning in Arizona. He looks forward to seeing you out there bright and early.
Oh, I'll be doing jumping jacks, man. We're running wind sprints in the parking lot. You need one of those.
Compared to Chicago, man, you should be in like t-shirt, flip flops.
That's gym shorts and slides and socks.
Never.
You know,
just because you live somewhere doesn't mean that you like that. Like people are like, oh, you're from Chicago. You should be used to that. Who gets used to weather like that? Like, no, nobody gets used to that. I feel like people that are like, oh, I love it when it's cold out. It's just so great. That's a lie. Unless you're a profuse sweater.
I love the seasons.
You don't like that. No, you like driving to the seasons. Driving to seasons is great when it's whatever temperature you want it to be where you're at. You can go to the cold, you can go to the heat. That's fantastic. But there's nothing better than Chicago summers. I will attest to that. But you're tested with the harsh winters. So it has been a little harsh, but we've gotten off pretty scot-free. Not much snow. I mean, it's like fake snow right now, but there's more snow in Louisiana than there is in Chicago right now.
Sean, looks like we got about 3 questions left.
Yep, 3 more. Kyle Lawson says, if you had an option to sign Carlos Estevez to a 3-year deal, would you do it? He's been pretty solid closer over the past 2 seasons.
Yes, he throws pellets, big dude. I know that people were looking at a lot of his numbers saying, well, the trend could go this way. And like, look at him compared to Hector Neris. I saw there was a big Estevez versus Neris comparison. I'm like, Estevez throws like 98. Yeah. Like Hector Neris throws like 93. That's a considerable difference when you're looking at the role that they fill. And Hector Neris was never a real closer. He's just a guy who's like, whatever you want me to do, I will do that. And when you're 92 to 94, unless you're just crazy crafty, I mean, you're not going to blow doors on cats and slam it at the end of the game. So I feel like Estevez would be a nice little piece to the puzzle. Like I said, if you can get him or you can get Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen throws harder now than he did 6-7 years ago. So I don't know how that happened. That's not my department. I'll let the R&D figure that out. Tyler Zombro, see if they can attack a few extra miles per hour if he's a guy who decides to come here. But if he does, he's a Team Jordan guy, and he always has about 17 boxes of shoes right out in front of his locker before every game. And one day he was like, hey, you want these? It's like, what size shoe you wear? I'm like, 13. He's like, oh, these are 15, man. Too bad you don't wear 15. I'd give you these. And I want to be like, no. I said 15, not 13. But yeah, he's a Nike guy. So if anyone wears 15s and you're around Kenley Jansen, that might be a treat if he ends up becoming a Cub.
I like it. Cole, Dave says, do you think Shota can repeat what he did last year?
I think so. I feel like when you have stuff like that, and it's not overpowering and you're still able to get outs, like he's a pitcher. I mean, it's what you tell a lot of young kids, hey, you want to pitch, don't throw, pitch, don't throw. And he can certainly pitch. And what we saw last year was pretty special. I feel like you could almost pencil him in every day for a W. So I think he can repeat, and I think he will repeat.
Justin Steele told me when we had him on the channel that we didn't even see at least 2 to 3 of Shota's pitches this year. So he's got stuff that he's hiding.
And I wonder how much Steely's picking his brain, maybe trying to get just an extra little something. We know he's primarily a 2-pitch guy. And if anything you can do that just changes the eye level or keeps him out front or off balance, that's going to be advantageous, not only to Justin Steele, Shota, and the Cubs, but to everybody who's watching.
I like the idea of Tyler Zombro. I'm really looking forward to asking some questions to him, who he's working with on our club. But last one, Josu says, it was great meeting you at the convention. I'm curious, do you have any routines, rituals, or similar to what ball players might do before they take the field that help you prepare for every show you do?
I mean, I prep pretty much the same way for every show. So I go through a rundown with, whoever my producer is, whether it's our guy, Michael Norman, you see him on the Bears podcast, or Andrew Miller. I run through that. And then I pretty much outline a skeleton on my note cards. So I have whatever our talking points are, and I'll have some nuggets, to get us from one point to another. But even though everything's cyclical, every day, you piggyback, and the information just becomes something that's there. Even though I know it for the most part, I always go through it. I write it down. I make sure that I have everything ready to go, and I'll be locked in, because you try to prepare for anything like you prepare for everything. And I feel like if you don't do everything the same way, the day that you don't, if something goes wrong, you'd be like, oh my God, why didn't I do this? They're like, I always do. So I try not to ever let there be any indecision or anything that doesn't it doesn't lead me down the same path or the right direction where I'm trying to go. So I feel like preparation is huge. I feel like that just comes into play after being a former athlete. And that's the message I tell like young kids in school or athletes coming up, man. Just work as hard as you can and prepare the same way. And then let your hard work take over after that. So.
And I got to sing your praises for a second, because when I saw you at CubsCon, just the amount that you pour into the young fans coming up to you asking for your autograph, it was really cool to see, man. Like, just you taking the time to make that a very special encounter for them. You're a good human being, Cole.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man, because I feel like it doesn't take that much. I mean, just to share a story and to ask somebody at CubsCon, like, hey, where are you from? Like, are you having fun? And I mean, I could be walking down the street tomorrow and no one would ever could care less who I am. I mean, it doesn't matter. So I feel like to them it matters. So my pops told me when he was a kid that he was at the YMCA and Muhammad Ali was there and didn't sign an autograph for him. And Muhammad Ali was obviously a transcendent figure in the world of sports. But what happened with he and my dad, he's like, I never asked anybody for an autograph after that. So I feel like even when I played ball in independent ball, I think you always would sign autographs, and it gives them a different outlook. And if you just have that quick conversation, like, they'll always remember that. So I see when I see players do it, who I know that everyone holds the players in an outrageously higher regard than they do me, and rightfully so. But I feel like when the players do it, and they take time out, like, there's kids that'll remember that for the rest of their lives. Like, I remember when I saw Justin Steele and he signed an autograph for me. Oh man, that was awesome. Like, they'll never forget that. So, hopefully I'm able to add just a little bit something of the same category too.
Cole Wright, thank you so much, man. And guys, next week we've mentioned him a couple times, Tyler Zombro coming on for our live Q&A as well. So be on the lookout for when that is going to drop. Cole, thanks so much for joining us here, brother.
Anytime, guys. I appreciate it.